Good evening, everyone. I'm feeling very tired, but the Lord wants me to sing anyway. So we'll see how we can do this. 277, Hark the Herald Angels Sing. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Joyful all ye nations rise, join the triumph of the skies, with angelic hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Christ by highest heaven adorned, Christ the everlasting Lord. Late in time, behold him come, offspring of the Virgin's womb. Veiled in flesh, the Godhead seed, hail the incarnate deity, pleased as man with men to dwell. Jesus our Emmanuel. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Hail the heaven-born Prince of Peace, hail the Son of Righteousness. Light and life to all he brings, risen with healing in his wings. Mild he lays his glory by, born that man no more may die, born to raise the sons of earth, born to give them second birth. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King.
You know, speaking about Christmas, you all know that Charles Schulz, the writer of the Peanut comic strip, you know he was a Christian, right? The guy who wrote Peanuts, Charlie Brown? So the Charlie Brown Christmas special, all that. When one of the networks came to him and said, we want you to do a Peanuts Christmas special, he said, I'll do it, but I'm going to put the Christmas story in there. And they tried to stop him, but then he's like, all right, and they let him do it. And if you'll notice, if you watch the Peanuts Christmas special, I think there's a part when Linus reads from the book of Luke. I don't know if you remember that. But if you have a chance, take a look at that Christmas special, good one. And the truth gets in there. Tonight we are talking about speaking the truth at our jobs. What does the Bible say about witnessing at your job, or how to evangelize at your job, or even how to view your job? Haven't you guys been at a lot of jobs where you ask somebody how they like their job, and they say, you ever hear this term? The same old, and a lot of times they put bad words in there. You know, pretty much like the same old crap I do all the time, right? That's how they think of their job. Is that the way a believer should think of their job? I don't think so. I don't think so. So we're going to look at a couple things tonight. They have some good things in here. At some jobs, there are people that are complaining about the work conditions all the time. Some people are bad-mouthing their bosses. Some people are lazy. And on and on and on. So how should a Christian be at the workplace? How should we view it? And I'll be honest with you. I kind of miss being among the unbelievers like that. Because to me, it's an exciting challenge to live for the Lord among a whole bunch of unbelievers. So when I was a New York City school teacher, that was pretty cool in that way. Is I'm interacting with other teachers, many unsaved, students who don't know the Lord but need to know the Lord, administrators, and there you are. You're in the midst of it. And I remember going to the cafeteria, the teacher's cafeteria, and hearing the teachers talk so badly about the school and the kids. It was terrible from one standpoint. But also from another standpoint, it was good. It was a chance to shine some light. So your workplace is a great place for evangelism, shining the light. How you live, how you work, how you carry yourself, what you talk about, and direct witness. So let's see what they have for us tonight in this outline. Roman numeral 1, the biblical perspective of work. A, work is a blank ordinance. Well, I'll read that first paragraph for you. Work is part of God's design for mankind. In the perfect environment of the Garden of Eden, Adam was given the responsibility to subdue and rule over creation and to cultivate and care for the garden. Now, wait a second. Did he care for the garden? Was he supposed to work the garden before the fall of man? It's actually true. It's actually true. In Genesis chapter 2, which is before the fall in Genesis 3, it says in verse 15 of chapter 2, the Lord took man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work the ground. Because some say, oh, work was just after the fall. You know, it's a curse. What was cursed was how hard the work would be. But Adam worked the garden before the fall, didn't he? After the fall, it had thorns and thistles. It was harder. So work is something that God wants people to do, and we do it to his glory? I think so. And we'll talk in a second, a little bit later, but all work is honorable as long as it's legal and it's not directly violating God's word. Of course, you get hard questions like, should I drive a truck for Budweiser? That is a hard question, right? I wouldn't want to do it. I wouldn't want to do it, but yeah, it's one of those things. You're not directly sinning, but you're bringing the beer around. Beer, technically, Christians can drink some, but drunkenness is wrong, and so you're going around with bringing, beers that people are going to drink too much and get into accidents and ruin their marriages, and so anyway, for me it would be too complex, and I would think I'd be violating Bible verses, or at least violating my conscience, probably. But other jobs are game. So, when Adam sinned, work became harder. Childbirth became harder for the women, right? Seems like everything became harder after the fall, right? So, but that doesn't mean that work is not honorable. That doesn't mean that it's not a provision of God. So now if you drop down to the third paragraph there, the goal is not simply to work, but to honor God with our labor. The theme of work appears throughout Scripture. Proverbs 6:6-11 speaks of the nature of the sluggard who ignores his responsibilities. The ant is not lazy, is he? And it illustrates, the ant in Proverbs as storing up food for the winter and all of that. And so there's a lot in the Bible about being diligent. A man who is good at his work will stand before kings. The New Testament, as we're going to see soon, says to work at everything that you do heartily as for the Lord, not for man. So working good, working hard, it's a good thing. We know that. So we don't want to be unbalanced about work. Now, can we overwork and do too much? The book of Ecclesiastes has a nice balance. I was reading it recently. Basically, look, God provides these jobs, and you can enjoy the fruit of your labor. Remember those verses that talk about enjoying the food and even the wine, it says, and all of that, which gladdens the heart. And so, in other words, a man enjoys the fruit of his labor, but in all his toil, and by the way, if you toil without the Lord and without obeying his commands, it's very much meaningless, right? You're going to die, your wealth is given to somebody else. Ecclesiastes is an interesting book, not an easy one to preach. So you got to think through that one when you preach it. But to me, it gives a nice balance. Even says not to be overly righteous, you know. On the other hand, if someone's not willing to work at all, what does it say? You don't let him do what? That's interesting. So the Bible's not big on laziness. I don't know that we want to overwork. That's why we try to be careful with our budgets, because if we're not careful with our budget, and I can't say I've always been good with my budget through the years, but then you have to work that, and it's hard. Some people have to work 2-3 jobs, but I'm a firm believer that we can structure things in a way where we don't overly commit. Because then it affects, think of it this way, fellas. It affects your whole spiritual life. Let's say you got to work 3 jobs, so you all work, hardly know scripture, hardly know church, and I've seen a lot of couples buy a house that's too high for their standard of living, brand new cars, brand new house, best education for the kids. I mean, everything's good that way. But husband and wife are killing themselves to maintain it all. Have you seen that in your day? Is that really, would that be God's best? Where all your time is dedicated to making money? Now, that's not to say, hey, there's been time periods in America, England, and other places where people were so poor and men had to work 10, 12 hours a day. It was just, just the way it was. But again, when you're thinking about work and all that, you want to wisely choose and wisely set up the way you live and the way you work and how you spend your money and all of that. It's not easy. I've made a lot of mistakes in my day. Well, work is a creation ordinance created by God at the beginning. Man was to have dominion over the earth even. That's another thing that he commanded, right? So now go to B. B says, blank is a gift. What do you think's in there? Well, it's our key word. Work. Doesn't Deuteronomy 8:18 say this? You shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives the power to make wealth. He gives us power to make wealth? God wants to provide for us, and one great way he provides is through giving us jobs. Yes or no? So then we look to our outline. Everything we have is a gift from God: food, oxygen, even work. We may say, how can this difficult effort and constant struggle be a gift from God? The answer is simple. Work is God's means of providing many of the necessities of life. In addition, it's a platform for evangelism and ministry. It's your platform. It's your soapbox. It's the place where you can let your light shine before men. It's a place where you can love people. It's a place where you can show how a Christian works, how a man of God, well, there's no women here tonight, how a man of God carries himself. They get to see a man of God in action at the job. Almost the more people around, the better. if we were all working at Stony Brook University. I think if I wasn't a pastor, that'd be a cool place to work, at a university, interacting with college students and everybody else, even if I was just cleaning the place. If I was a mailman, hopefully I'd be the whistling mailman. You too. And people would enjoy seeing you pull up and have a good word for people as sometimes they come out and take the mail and, you know. But it is a gift of God. It's a gift of God. They even say in your outline, work is a part of common grace. I would agree with that. Let's go to C. Here's our key word again, blank, or work is a ministry and the workplace is a mission field. That's the way you got to think of it. That'll help you get up in the morning. Now, I know it's hard. Let's say you work in a small company and you've been witnessing to the same guys or interacting with the same guys for 20 years. I would find that hard. If there's only 5 people in the company and, you know, you've been witnessing to these guys, they're closed. In fact, I'll tell you this. When I was a New York City school teacher, I drove with 3 teachers. One was a Haitian man who was Catholic. One was a liberal lady, and one was a Jewish guy. And, you know, I got the gospel in there, but I can't say any of them trusted Christ. And after a while, you know, I mean, they put the oldie station on, so at least I got to hear a couple oldies sometimes. And I, you know, would relate to them well on other fronts. But they wouldn't talk about Jesus, no talk about Jesus, complaining about the school and the kids, and it wasn't as good as it could have been. At the school, it was good, interacting with a lot of teachers and students. And in the Bronx, the South Bronx, I was pretty free to really evangelize, to be honest. I taught science, and I told those kids a lot about creation. Well, inner city school. On the other hand, when I was a substitute teacher in the Sachem district out here in Ronkonkoma, they were on my case when I witnessed. I was brought to the principal's office. None of your crusades in this school. He called it my crusades. Anyway, I thought you might find that interesting. I might have mentioned that before somewhere along the line. Again, I repeat, C, work is a ministry and a workplace is a mission field. One valuable principle, this is good for reading. One valuable principle emphasized during the Reformation was the sanctity of all callings. The Reformers were good at this. They were going to tell people that not only, some people say, oh, pastor, your job or missionary's job, those are the only ones where you're really serving God. The rest of us are doing mundane, stupid stuff. No. Your work is God-given. There's a sanctity to it. This concept denied medieval distinctions between clergy and laity. Before the Reformation, believers in the workplace were thought to have a less spiritual or less important calling than a full-time minister in the church. That is not true. Believers in the workplace have a sovereignly chosen mission field. They're co-workers. Have you guys heard that before, that the Reformers thought like that? Any thoughts about that? Is there a sanctity to your calling? Yeah. Jesus got you the job. You're doing it for Jesus. He's pleased with good work. And you get a chance to be a light where you are. Josh, how many employees are in your place?
I'd say roughly 100.
Mission field. And then, Giovanni, you guys go around and work homes.
Yeah.
All right. Mission field. How many fellow workers?
3 of us.
Ah,
Yeah, it's just 3, so.
and 2 are saved.
Well, actually, we're all believers.
All believers.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. What page are we on for Maria? Lesson 7, page 35. So we're saying, oh, I don't want Maria to miss this one. Your work is as good as if you were a missionary. Say, what do you mean? God put you there, you do that work to the glory of God, and you're a witness where you work. So you know how a lot of people, even Christians sometimes, say, oh, I got to go to that stupid job, and I don't want to. You're serving God where you work. So that's C. Work is a ministry, and the workplace is a mission field. Let's go to Roman numeral 2 now. Oh, by the way, so when I was a custodian at Grace Church, I enjoyed that job. I enjoyed cleaning. I was with fellow seminary students, college students, and other guys from the church. And I thought we were doing something good because we were setting up things for the church ministries. Now, what if I was a custodian in one of the local schools? Again, great mission field. I wouldn't mind it at all if I wasn't a pastor. I like being a pastor, but if I couldn't be a pastor or I'm not a pastor, I wouldn't mind being a teacher in the school. I wouldn't mind cleaning the school. You get a little exercise. It's not that stressful, really. And you could witness a lot, talk to people, get in conversations. So whatever job you have, that's your mission field. Roman numeral 2, the biblical practice of evangelism at work. I believe it's on page 36, which would be the next page in the sheets. The biblical practice of evangelism at work. Now, how do we do it? At your job, how do you live for the Lord there? A, recognize that God is your ultimate employer. Who are you really working for? If you got a lousy boss, well, you're supposed to respect that guy and work. But ultimately, you're doing it for Jesus. That's what the verses are going to say. Let's read that paragraph. Though a human being has been sovereignly appointed as our immediate authority, God is our ultimate employer, is the ultimate employer of every Christian. Paul calls us to work with goodwill. Wait, yours says different. With goodwill, render service as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that whatever good thing each one does, this he'll receive back from the Lord, whether slave or free. You mean God's going to reward me even for cleaning a school? Yes. If you're working to his glory, he rewards you for good work, no matter what it is, as long as it's legal and not sinful. Sheila works in a Paradise store at the MacArthur Airport. If she's a good cashier lady, she works hard, sets the shelves up good, treats customers well, let some light shine, it's good. By the way, Keith Hernandez came through her way, and she didn't know it was Keith Hernandez. I said, you don't know Keith Hernandez? I would have known it's Keith Hernandez and gotten into a conversation about the Mets with him. And by the way, I ran into Tucker Carlson. No, I'm only kidding. Only Bill O'Reilly so far. Never know who you run into. I did meet Cal Ripken. Did I tell you that one? I don't know if I witnessed to him. I'm not sure if I witnessed to him, but one of my sons was a pretty good baseball player, and we went down to Maryland to the Ripken Baseball Center or whatever, and Cal would be riding on a golf cart. Kind of a nice guy. And I had my other son was with me, Paul, as well. And I said, Cal, could my son take a picture with you? He said, well, sure. There's a big 6'4" kind of guy, gets out and puts his arm around Paul and took a picture with Paul. So anyway, so I met Cal Ripken. But back to what we're saying here, though, that we work as unto the Lord. We work as to the Lord because he is the one we love and serve, and he's the one, it says there in Colossians 3, knowing that from the Lord you receive the reward of the inheritance. And it says again, it's the Lord Christ whom you serve. You serve Jesus. So hopefully that gives you a better perspective for your job. Now, what about your earthly employer? Would you go up to him and say, look, I work for Jesus. I don't really work for you, stupid, but I work for Jesus. No. So you don't do that either. B, honor and obey your earthly employer. Obey? Now, Now, wait a second. Look in the outline there, 1 Timothy 6. All who are under the yoke as slaves are to regard their own masters as worthy of all honor. Now, wait a second. Does this extend to, I mean, we're not slaves, and our owners are not masters, but wait a second. If even in slavery we were supposed to obey the guy, then in something less than slavery, are we supposed to listen to the boss or not? Yes, by extension, yes. You got to listen to what the man says? By the way, that's a song. You guys don't know it, right? You got to listen to what the man says. McCartney? Anyway, McCartney and Wings. It was Maria who would tell me that a certain boss would change up how to make the sandwiches just to show his bosshood. So in other words, if you're supposed to put, I don't know, 2 ham, 2 turkey and cheese, he'll switch it up, 2 cheese, 1 turkey, and just, right? So what'd you do? You said, okay, Ray. So Maria made the sandwiches like the guy wanted her to make the sandwiches. Oh. And Errol worked for rich people installing kitchens or whatever, and if they wanted it changed, if there was 1 chip, what happens? Give them a discount, or how many times do you have to take the whole thing out again? Even the customer's always right. Not really, but they are in some fashion. So you got to listen to the boss. Peter also wrote that we ought to treat our employers with all respect, 1 Peter 2:18. Let's go there for a second. 1 Peter 2:18. Let's see what that one says in a little more. 1 Peter 2:18. I do want to talk about slavery for a second after this verse. Someone read that out. Who's got that one? 1 Peter 2:18.
Servants, be subject to your masters with all respect, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the unjust.
Oh, man, even to the bad boss. Well, Jesus endured maltreatment, right? So I suppose we can put up with a bad boss. By the way, should you expect an unsaved boss to act like they're saved? Their language is not going to be good at times. They may be tricky. They may demean other people. Does that mean we can't say something to them? I think we can appeal to a boss. You always say it in respect. If the boss's name was Frank. You know, Frank, when you talk bad about the other employees, it doesn't help the work environment. I would say that to a boss. You know. I wouldn't be like, you shouldn't do it, Frank. Say, Frank, you know, you want this business to thrive. When you treat people like that, I don't think they're going to work as hard. You know. But don't expect an unsaved boss to act like they're saved. Some of them are very good, by the way. Peter also instructs us to bear up under unjust treatment. For what credit is there when you sin and are harshly treated? You endure it with patience. But if when you do what is right and suffer for it, you patiently endure it, this finds favor with God. Let's talk about slavery for 1 second. So many people would say, the Bible supports slavery, and so that's wrong. Think of it this way. In God's sovereignty, slavery was allowed. He allowed men to be sinful. I find there's always a view to freedom in the Bible. I'll show you a passage or two. Plus, you have to understand something, that kidnapping was wrong. So at least for American slavery, kidnapping was involved. Not all slavery was the same. Indentured servants were different than slaves. But for argument's sake, kidnapping is wrong. So the American slave trade was wrong. Because there was kidnapping was involved, right? So that's one thing. 1 Corinthians 7:21 says, "Were you a bondservant when you were called? Do not be concerned about it. But if you can gain your freedom, avail yourself to the opportunity." Interesting. Always a view to freedom. Isn't it interesting that the best abolitionists were Christian guys in England, and some even in America, but in England especially? Who is that one famous one? I'm forgetting his name too. Wilberforce, thank you. William Wilberforce, Christian. Really short guy. I think he was like 5'4", and he really worked hard to get the slaves free. A Christian. Using biblical principles. Book of Philemon. Slave runs away. And the Apostle Paul wants the slave master to receive him back like a brother. And you even see a view to things loosening up there. So, anyway, I figured we'd have to talk about slavery for a second. Let's say we were slaves in America back then. Well, we would try to work as best as we could. It would really depend on what kind of master we had. As you know, some were very abusive. And that's why there were so many verses. Again, God trying to regulate it better. Masters give up threatening. So if they're supposed to give up threatening, they're supposed to really kill slaves and all of that. So, some say, well, the Bible promotes slavery. No, it doesn't promote slavery. It regulates it. It's not like a big promotion of it. Like, yeah, more. The Bible never says get more and more slaves. It's a great thing. So, and there was always this view to freedom. What happened in the year of Jubilee? That's canceled. And were there other times when slaves would be set free? Jewish, I guess. So, interesting, right? So, another topic, another day. But you're not a slave at your job, but you are a worker, and all the more, be a good worker and follow the directions of the boss. There it is. What's the one exception? If your boss says to do what? Steal, lie, cheat, hurt somebody. Could you imagine working with a lot of heavy machinery, and the boss doesn't like somebody else and tells you to go run them over or something? Or not run them over, that'd be to rig it up where the machine would hurt the guy without anybody knowing. What if he wanted you to weigh things out unfairly, that you're giving everybody 3 pounds of your product, and you really should have given them 3.2 pounds. But he says, scale it down to 3. Scale it down. So that would be the exception. There's only one exception in obeying, is in your notes. The exception occurs when you're told to disobey God's law. Since God establishes all authority figures, we must submit to their direction and leadership. However, we must never break God's law. Fair enough, right? Now, go to C. You could read through some of that on your own, the other part. Drop down to C. Blank Christ with your blank. Honor Christ with your example. So, we're just assuming you're working hard or you're listening to your boss, but now your example overall, by being a good worker, being spirit-filled, treating people with love and respect and deity, finding out about your fellow employees and what their life is like, what they've been through, the problems they face, just like you would do with your neighbors. You want to be a good coworker. Wouldn't you want that if somebody came to your job, they'd say, you know what? They work hard. They treat people right. Wouldn't you want that to be said of you? So in your notes it says, If you're known for being a lazy person or doing shoddy work, your verbal testimony will be worthless in the workplace. This may convict many of us who have not been the kind of godly example we would like to be, such that we face the temptation to believe it would be better not to evangelize than to publicly shame the name of Christ with a bad reputation. Now that's bad. You're a lazy worker, you're not a good worker, and you won't witness because you know you're a lazy, bad worker. No good, right? So what's the solution? Obviously, what's the solution? Step up your game, start being a good worker, and witness. And they throw in that verse there. God commanded us to work diligently so that the name of our God and our doctrine may not be spoken against. If you and I are bad testimonies at our jobs, and they know we're Christians, then they'll think that Christians are whatever you are, lazy, bad attitude, on and on. 1 Timothy 3, one of the qualifications for being an elder, we must maintain a good reputation with those outside the church. So actually, if a man was being considered to be an elder or a pastor, it wouldn't be so bad to interview his old boss. That would really say a lot. Could you imagine a guy wanting to be a pastor and you go to his job and a guy says, he was the laziest, everybody else did his work, he claimed credit for other people's work, his lunch breaks were a half an hour too long, he always complained he wasn't making enough money, and he was impatient with the other employees, and he blew his cool, 20 times since I've known. So think about it. What's your reputation at your job? What's my reputation at my second job? So you can honor Christ with your example. I like that quote. Do you see a man skilled in his work? At the end of that section, do you see a man skilled in his work? He'll stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. You know what? Have there been a lot of unbelievers that have become really good at what they do? Yeah. The Beatles. They've played before what? Presidents, kings and queens in England. Michelangelo, I don't know if he was a believer or not. Steve Jobs, what is he credited with? Apple? Right? I don't know if Thomas Edison was a Christian, but he made the light bulb, right? And other stuff. A lot of unbelievers work hard. That's my point. A lot of unbelievers do a really good job. Now again, that's their only thing. They want to make money. They want to look good. Their motive may not be good, to show how great they are, to make the most money for them. But nonetheless, they're good workers. And so I think we too should be good workers. Does that make sense? D, be tactful in looking for evangelistic opportunities. Let's say you weren't doing your job right and you're just witnessing your head off. So let's say you're making all the sandwiches wrong because you're doing so much witnessing. You're installing the air conditioners and heating wrong. You came to fix it, you're talking so much, you don't fix it right. Balance, right? And different jobs are different. In New York City, I could preach the gospel in a school. In Long Island, I had to be smarter, or I would get kicked out of the school. If you just get kicked out, then you're just done. You say, but we're not supposed to compromise. Well, think of it this way. We ought to preach the gospel everywhere, but your work environment's a little bit different. And what I mean by that is you got to get the job done. And if your boss is telling you not to witness there, that's an interesting dilemma. Some people would change jobs. Some people would recognize that they need to live it there and pray for the boss. Every situation's different. I'm not going to say that we can make some kind of exactly how you would do it. But always biblical principles. Always biblical principles. Let's say you work for a Jewish place. That'd be tough, right? There's in fact, it was one time with Hope Fitness where and even Sheila got involved with this. I was working with two autistic girls for a gym class in a little tiny Jewish school at a synagogue. Sheila taught those two kids too, different subjects. So we were among really Jewish people. So you really can't go in there and just start talking about Jesus to everybody, right? It just wouldn't work there. But to be a good testimony. But I don't know if I got into a conversation with the rabbi about things. To get into good conversations, to live it, to love them, your form of evangelism might be different there. Let's say you're working for a halal place with all Muslims. You're not going to go in there and just be talking about the Bible all day. You got to be smart. So, anyway, may the Lord give us wisdom, whatever environment we're in. We be tactful. Matthew 10:16, the verse they give. Behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves, so be shrewd as serpents, innocent as doves. The important concept is the meaning of the word shrewd. Christ instructs us not to be deceptive or misleading, but wise, intelligent, and sensible in the way we communicate the gospel. We must be looking for the right opportunities. And look what it says about the shrewd evangelist. This is a good list. Ask open-ended questions rather than yes or no questions. And what are you doing for Christmas? That's better than do you celebrate Christmas? Yes, no. Yes. What are you going to do for Christmas this year? Oh, my family's coming over and blah, blah, blah. And, well, will you be attending church? Good question. For an unbeliever, that makes you find out where they are. Secondly, be actively interested in the events of another person's life. Love is communicated by being interested in people. I've learned that through the years, really, and that I try to be interested in people who come to the church here or meet out there. Just really interested in who they are, where they work, where did they go to high school? It's my big question. And you usually can find something to relate to them on. Are you a Knick fan? Are you a Net fan? There's always something. How are you doing during coronavirus season? And then look for opportunities to bring God's word to bear on a conversation. There's always that transition. You can get into spiritual things. Jesus did it with the Samaritan woman. It started with a cup of what? A cup of water. And then he's talking about living water. Jesus was pretty crafty, wasn't he? Cup of water, living water. And there it was, a whole spiritual conversation. So we want to be wise. Colossians 4, 5, and 6. Let me read that. If you're quick, you can turn there. Colossians 4, 5, and 6. I like those verses. Colossians 4, 5, and 6. Walk in wisdom toward outsiders, making the best use of the time. Let your speech also always be gracious, seasoned with salt, that you may know how to answer each person. How's that? Walk wisely toward outsiders. Make good use of the time. Let your speech always be gracious. Anybody's translation say something different? What does that mean? Are you going to be sarcastic all the time? Are you going to talk with bitterness? Are you going to have unwholesome words come out of your mouth? Well, to obey that verse, I know we wouldn't do that obeying that verse, right? Good speech. Isn't some food doesn't taste good without salt? If I have eggs, got to have some salt. Scrambled eggs. Gotta have some salt. What else needs salt? There's other things. Even rice. A little butter, a little salt helps, right? Your speech seasoned with salt is it's appropriate speech. It's beneficial to people. Good speech. That's half the game. I mean, talking to people the right way at your job. Let's go to E. Believe it or not, we're going to finish a section. And then we just have one more left, lesson 8, and we're done with this book. So, but make use of it. If you have the book, if you still need one, I got an extra copy. Make use of it yourself. If you want to borrow the teacher's guide to fill in the blanks. So this is all to prepare you to witness. Now, E is important. Always live above what? Above reproach. That means, the word means not to be blamed for major stuff. Let it not be that your boss has something on you. He's lazy, she's argumentative, he's a pain in the neck, she's a pain in the neck. She's impatient, he's impatient. Late all the time to work. Matthew also uses the word innocent. This concept carries the idea of being without a mixture of evil, hence being pure and undefiled. We must evangelize people without breaking, reproach upon the name of Christ. This means we do not steal from the company we want to evangelize. If you're fired, it should be for standing for the truth, not for stealing time from the company or breaking clearly explained company policies. Do not give your enemies the opportunity to speak evil against you, especially in the area of your reputation or your work ethic. And what's the big verse? 1 Peter 3:15, very beautiful verse. I think they have it in your outline. 1 Peter 3:15, they do. Peter instructs us to sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that's in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. Be ready to give them the truth and to defend the faith. Sanctify Christ as Lord in your heart. Should you pray before you go to your job? Yeah, why not? Get prayed up. How about a little scripture? Sure, read some Bible. On the way to work, what should you listen to? Well, I think Maria's station is 95.5. So inspirational, quick, contemporary music gets her going. Family radio, 88.9, 570 AM. Nothing wrong with some news to know what's going on in the world. What's going on in the world helps you with conversations with people. I get Newsday every day. You say, why? I want to keep up on what's going on. Sports too. And even though I might not watch a lot of whole games and all that, I can still talk with the average guy about the Phoenix Suns doing real well against Golden State and both their records being good and Devin Booker and Chris Paul being such good players. And it makes us relatable. Because the Apostle Paul said what? Be everything to every what? Let's go there, last verse. Where's that? 1 Corinthians 9? Did I get the right one? And that's why it's good to learn a few words in the language of different people. They like when you say a word. If I go into a Chinese restaurant, they give me the Chinese food, and I say, Sheisha. Oh, I only know 2 words. Ni hao ma means like hi, and Sheisha. For Korean people, we had a Korean pastor here for a time. My big line is, 안녕하세요. And that's kind of like another hello or something like that. And it brings a smile to their face. Spanish, I can do more. Portuguese, a little bit. Not much at all, but they speak that over there. Instead of iglesia, it's igreja for church in Portuguese. If I meet Turkish guys, I always say how much I like the gyros. And I do, I really do like gyros. If I go to a diner, I'm getting a gyro. Oh, I'm hungry right now thinking of that. Gyros. And then I ask them, are you from Istanbul? The great city of Istanbul. And they usually tell me yes or no. Or it's conversation. Being everything to every man, 1 Corinthians 9. Where is that? 1 Corinthians 9. Is that the one? Did I get it right? Yeah. So we go to verse 11. And we'll end with the words of the Apostle Paul, or any response to this. For though I am free from all, I made myself a servant to all, that I might win more of them. To the Jews I became as a Jew in order to win Jews. Didn't Paul even take a vow one time in the book of Acts? Didn't he do some things you thought he normally wouldn't do? He wasn't doing it because he had to do it or to get more spiritual. He was just doing it to identify with the Jews. To those under the law, I became as one under the law, though not being myself under the law, that I might win those under the law. To those outside the law, Gentiles, I became as one outside the law, not being outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ, that I might win those outside the law. If you're going to win bikers, would you wear a leather jacket maybe? Maybe. You don't want to go there in a three-piece suit with all the bikers. At least you're going to dress down some. What's another example? Give me another example of this kind of thing. How do I identify with people? To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I become all things to all people, so that by all means I might save some. Wait, who's saving him? Jesus or him? The Lord he uses means, right? Ultimately, it's the Lord. But you know what he's trying to say. I want to get people saved. He would do almost whatever he had to do. I do it all for the sake of the gospel, that I may share with them in its blessings. What's another example of this? Hudson Taylor, thank you. I was thinking of that. What did Hudson Taylor do, Jim? He dressed up like the Chinese. What about food? What if you go to somebody's house and they serve you monkey brain? Josh? As long as it's not sacrificed to idols. It says in the Bible, like, eat what's put before you. But I think in that context, I don't think it means we have to eat something that would make us throw up. In some ways, my stomach is kind of weak. And Sheila's tried to fool me through the years. She made frog legs one time. I knew I did not eat it. I don't like shrimp. I don't want to taste squid. I'm not interested in octopus. I'm just that type of guy. I'm not interested in some stuff that I haven't tasted. Taste it, it's good. It tastes like chicken. No. Maybe that's why I'm not a missionary. It'd be kind of hard for me, eating stuff that I don't normally eat. And both countries I went to, I got sick. So, anyway. But I think it was in Venezuela. Oh, I'll tell you that story, and then we'll end. So in Venezuela, of course, any thoughts about all this? They took me to the place where they were going to get the cheese and the corn. So I go to this place, and I'm coming down here because it was an outdoor, big thing to cook on. And I'm seeing this stuff, it's sizzling on there. And one thing looked like corn, all mashed up and stuff, and they had sizzling that, and cheese was there sizzling. And when I got back to the house, they gave me a big wad of this stuff. And it tasted all right. But whatever it was, the native air, the native organisms, after I ate that, I was not the same for 3 months. I haven't been the same for life, I think. But especially in the beginning. In the bathroom all the time, losing weight. I shouldn't have ate it. I should not have eaten that. But I didn't know, because they say if you cook things, it's okay. But it was almost like the Lord was allowing me to see. It's out in the open grill, there's flies all around and stuff, and tastes good though. What did I pay the price? going to specialists and all that, you know, all of that. So any thoughts about this work for the Lord? Any thoughts? Good section they gave us? Oh, by the way, before I forget, so remember, next week, I'm trying to leave, on Wednesday to Tuscarora Inn. Another lady named Marie, who we counsel, she and her husband treating us to go to Christmas time, and we even get a chance to hear Steve Green sing. Steve Green's going to be there. You guys know Steve Green? Friday night. Oh, if you don't know Steve Green, type in Steve Green. He's a good singer, good Christian singer. Been around a long time. Since Sheila and I got saved in the 80s, he was around. So he's kind of older guy, but he's good singer. And I think he's even sung at Grace Community Church. But next Wednesday night. Now, Giovanni, you're still slated and available to preach that Sunday, right?
12, right?
The 12th. And you're good? You're not overburdened? Studies? When do your finals end?
Finals are this Tuesday coming up.
Oh, and then you're done. Ah. All right, so he'll be loose and free. And then, Josh, you were going to preach on a Sunday night, not next week, but the week after. At night, at nighttime? Well, you got the night sermon. He's got the day sermon. Day, night. So that leaves next Wednesday. Errol, you up for next Wednesday here? Yeah. And then maybe even the pharmacy. Yeah. Yeah. Good question. I think Josh wanted to push it off. Not this Sunday coming up, but the next one? Okay. And so now Sunday night is another deal. You don't have to do Sunday night if you don't want to do that as well. It's Wednesday. But it wouldn't be a problem? All right, we'll talk about it, yeah. I don't want you to be overburdened, but... And again, Wednesday nights are easier than Isaiah.